We're back with our next guest. We have Ross Dolan of Immolation with us. Welcome to the show, Ross.
Thanks for having me.
So, Ross, we're here today to talk about your new album, Axa God, off of Nuclear Blast Records. One of your darkest releases, really, and it's been like 5 years since your last release. And in that 5 years, we went from pretty good world to live into whatever the hell we're living in now. So where did you all draw your inspiration from when writing this album?
Well, the thing about this album is Bob started writing the music for this one back in like 2018. So we started, well before the pandemic, just devastated us. So by the time we started our last run for Atonement, which was probably around mid 2019, I would say, we had about 4 songs already written. No lyrics yet, so we didn't have that inspiration yet. Once we were done with that cycle, it was probably December. It took us right up to December of 2019. So we had actually planned for a downtime in 2020 to kind of finish the writing and hopefully get in the studio. We don't work too well without a deadline, so that's why I said hopefully we would have gotten to the studio by 2020. But it didn't matter anyway because the pandemic hit and we were shut down and we didn't get together to rehearse, and we didn't see the guys until like May of this year. So it was a long process, but it allowed us to really take our time and absorb the songs, which was super important for Steve, who probably has like the worst job, trying to create something unique with the drum patterns and add to kind of what Bob has laid out as a template. So for him, he's always really pushed for time because we write right up until the moment we go into the studio, more or less. So that doesn't allow for a ton of time. So the last album was a little bit better, and this album for sure. So we had a lot of extra time. So we did get that out of being stuck at home. We had time to really craft these songs. But I think lyrically and, the whole tone of the album is much darker, of course, but I don't think we drew much inspiration from the pandemic itself. I mean, just being home and just being in that dark place for a few months, that's inspiring enough. And then, there was a lot of madness in our world the last number of years. So, yeah, we drew from a lot of that. Not so much the pandemic. Some of these ideas we had before, going into 2020, some of those ideas evolved during the course of 2020, 2021. So, but it wasn't until all the songs were complete, which was probably early this year. I think the last track that we wrote on that was Apostle, and that probably came to us, I don't know, probably on February or March. So once we had that last piece of the puzzle, I was able to kind of, sit down and kind of put ideas to the different songs, because that's how I work, and that's how, Bob works. We work together with that. So yeah, it really, we had the time, which was nice, to kind of craft everything and not rush anything. So it's a good place to be. So yeah, lots of inspiration, but more inspiration just from, around the world, nothing, not pandemic specific, if that is what you were asking specifically.
And now, speaking of Apostle, that is the first single that you released off the album. So tell us a little bit about that song and why you chose this particular song to be your first single.
We just like that song a lot. It's a really cool song. It has a lot of those elements I think the fans look for in our music. It's very dynamic. It's got a lot of dark, heavy, catchy parts. A lot of really intense, explosive parts. So yeah, it was a good song. That was high on my list. That became one of my favorites as soon as I heard it. Once Bob finished it and emailed it to me and I got to hear it, I was like, wow, this is a really good song. I like this one. There's something very cool about it. It's got a very cool vibe about it. So that was one of the first songs we chose to kind of get out there, immediately. We just wanted kids to hear this one first. So yeah, I mean, we're happy with it. I think, it's rare that this band ever 100% agrees on things like that, but we were all in agreement on that one for sure. So that's a good sign.
That is. And you were talking a little bit about Steve's work on the album, and I think he did a really good job too, because listening to it, there's a lot of cool elements on it, and even like the beginning of Blooded, and he has like those good old school cymbal chokes on there and stuff. I mean, I really liked the drum parts that he threw into this album for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, in my opinion, and I think Bob and Alex as well, we could all probably agree that it's probably his best work. I mean, he just knocked it out of the park with this one. He had a lot of time invested in this. You know, he'd get a new song and he'd spend, you know, a month or two on it, and then he'd send us a demo of him, you know, his ideas, and sometimes it'd be, you know, multiple versions with different kind of ideas for certain parts, but it was cool. He had that time, you know, and, you know, he had enough time to kind of, you know, I guess sort out the stuff he didn't want to include. So it was kind of, you know, nice for him to have that and to not be rushed and to be confident going into the studio. And, you know, just go in there knowing, okay, here's what I'm going to play, you know. And, you know, sometimes things change when you're in the studio on the you know, on the spot. You know, sometimes you'll add something in like, oh, that sounded cool, let's leave that, you know. But I think in general, I think he was real happy with his performance on this, which is good, you know, because sometimes he's super critical of his own performance, you know. We're not as critical because we always think he does a great job, you know, live and on the records. But, you know, that's just how he is. So I think with this one, he went in with a lot more confidence, and I think he just crushed it because he had the time. So, yeah, probably, you know, our favorite. You know, we think it's his best performance, and I think it's you know, our favorite from him. You know, because of all the cool stuff, like you said, he does just a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of really intricate like patterns, stuff that kind of goes against the rhythms but works with them. You know, just awesome. I love it. A lot of cool cymbal work. Yeah. So you know, that's what time will do for you if you have it. You know?
And also, you know, we have to talk really quick about the artwork of this album. So tell us a little bit about the artwork and the artist. It's awesome. I love it. I want a painting on my wall.
Yeah, he's great, Illaran. He's been on our radar for a while, and he actually reached out to us probably around Majesty and Decay, but we were already, you know, looking at Par all of a sudden for that record, and we wound up using Par for the next couple of releases just because he was a great artist, awesome guy, and easy to work with, and we loved what he did for us. But, you know, once we had the music pretty much finished and we were working on the lyrical concepts and everything, we knew at that point that we needed something much darker. This was a darker record, and it needed something, you know, the aesthetic of this had to be completely different. So we, you know, once we locked in on the title, you know, we drew a lot of inspiration from a lot of lines throughout the songs, you know, and there was a lot of references to light throughout the lyrics. There were other references that kept popping up, so that's kind of what we kind of focused on. And, you know, Bob and I came up with the idea for the cover, the whole concept. We decided Illaran was the guy for the job because we liked he has that very classic, like, you know, religious Renaissance kind of vibe to a lot of his pieces. And then he has that, like, dark surrealism of, like, you know, artists like Beksinski from Poland, you know, that really dark, nightmarish stuff. And he integrates them really well together. So, you know, I was looking at his stuff while we were in the recording studio, and I was leaning towards him, and I was telling Bob, I'm like, yeah, I think this is going to be our guy. But once we kind of had the title and we knew lyrically where we were going with a lot of this stuff, that's when we kind of locked into him. And, yeah, he knocked it out of the park. We sent him all of our ideas, I think, which helped the process because he only had about a month for this. So usually he takes about 3 months or 4 months. I forgot what he said in his email, but he takes a lot longer. So he took this on knowing he wasn't going to have a lot of time. But I think the fact that we had everything kind of outlined for him as far as tone, you know, kind of color scheme, what we were looking for, you know, the main scene with the four angels and the dark light coming down. We kind of sent him all the details on that, and he was real happy about that because he's a longtime fan, and he's like, wow, this is great. He was very excited about it. His email back to us after we gave him the concept, he was totally stoked, and that's what we wanted to hear. We were like, wow, this guy's really into it. That's awesome, you know, and he's like, this is great. He's like, this will kind of, you know, harken back to the earlier records, especially the first record, you know, the Dawn of Possession record with the demons and angels on there. I'm like, absolutely. I said, you know, do your thing. So he just knocked it out of the park. Very dark and hopeless and but classic looking at the same time. You know, just a great look to the piece. We're really happy with it.
So the album comes out the same day that the tour kicks off. So tell us a little bit about the upcoming tour, Ross.
Oh, the tour will start off. I mean, luckily for this cycle, the album will be out when the tour starts. You know, that was we were kind of going back and forth with the label to see if that was going to be possible, because at first we thought it was going to come out later. And obviously we were not happy with that because we had the tour already booked and in motion like months ago, and that was kind of part of the plan, So, but, the label, was able to kind of bring it back to the beginning of the tour, which coincided perfect. It worked out great. We have a great lineup, Imperial Triumphant, who we've, done a couple shows with already, from Brooklyn, and Mortiferum from Northwest, old school death metal, and just good stuff. It's a good, I think, variety of stuff, with like newer upcoming acts, and that's, we're happy with that. That's what we wanted. We wanted something like that, with just cool newer bands that had something fresh to offer the scene, but still giving a nod to, the early days. So it was, we were happy that we were able to kind of get these guys on board, and all the bands are cool, and then we have a show at the end of the tour in New York with which is going to be just such a classic show for us, because Mortician's going to be on the bill, Demolition Hammer, both bands from Yonkers, from our neck of the woods, bands that we kind of knew from back in the 80s when we first started. Like, all those guys were around back then. So it's really a cool moment to have a show like at Irving Plaza in New York City with like all those bands, and then we got Black Anvil is joining us on that one, and they'll be on the last couple of dates of the tour. I love Black Anvil. They're from Brooklyn guys. We toured with them on the Mayhem tour, so that's going to be great. And then Funeral Leech will be the first band on that New York show, and they're also from Brooklyn, younger band. I think they just put out their first album this past year. So, it's good. So we kind of have a lot of the old school, some of the newer generation on that bill, but all New York bands. So we're psyched about that.
So there you guys have it. Immolation have a new album out February 18th, Axa God, off of Nuclear Blast Records. And as always, you can pre-order some goodies, and there's always going to be cool bundles and stuff like that. And if you get a chance, check them out on tour starting in February. And Ross, congratulations on the new album, and thank you for taking the time to do this here with us today. And we wish you and the band all the best in the new year.
Wow, thank you so much. Thanks for having me once again. It was a pleasure. Great interview, and hope to see you soon.